It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in.
Managing a property rehab. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. This is actually the latest rehab I finished up in December that y'all are looking at here on the screen. This property itself was bought it for $255 rehab. I over rehabbed it. I'm not gonna lie. And that's something I will talk about in the presentation because that is again a big thing that can completely throw off an entire project over rehabbing properties. But one thing about me is I really like high quality stuff, and there was a lesson in here from this one that I can't wait to share with y'all too. So but like I said, this was a 255. Rehab was about 100,000. ARV about 500,000. So pretty solid spread on this deal. And it was a complete gut on the inside. Everything, this wall in the kitchen, you see this beam here, that was a complete. There was a huge wall. Knocked that out. Put this beam up here. Put 2 columns. Stained them. New flooring. Everything. So huge 10-foot island slab, quartz waterfall counter. So there's a lot of money that went into this house. So we'll talk about that here in a second. So the first thing I kind of want to get into.
Hey, Alex, for those who may not know, do you mind defining what ARV means?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So ARV, after repair value. So essentially what happens is whenever you are buying property, if you're buying properties, correctly, you're going to be buying them distressed and for under market value. So essentially you're buying things at a discount, right? So you could either go buy something on the MLS at retail, which for the MLS means like it's like the retail market, right? So it's where the houses on Zillow, Realtor, Redfin, all those places. Those are the MLS listings. Or you can find something off market at a discount price. And whenever you find that property at a discounted price, what you essentially do is you want to determine how much is this property actually going to be worth once I'm finished renovating it, and I can either sell it or keep it as a rental, because that's going to determine, obviously, what it's going to be worth when it's fixed up is going to be what you can sell it for, right? If you want to flip it. So that's your ARV, after repair value. That's essentially what that is. You want to figure out what that property is going to be worth once it's fixed up. And that's essentially done through looking at the comps, which are the comparables. It's just essentially like the similar houses in the neighborhood, right? So if I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that's beat up, I'm going to look at another similar 3-bed, 2-bath house, same square footage, and see how did they finish that property. Like what were the finishes they put in that property, and how can I want to mimic that to get that similar value, right? So that's essentially what ARV is. Cool. So let's kind of get into this specific aspect of rehabbing. So the first thing I kind of want to touch on before we get into this is, how I kind of go about finding my deals, right? Or how I kind of go about, doing my due diligence on my deals, right? So in the beginning, whenever I do find a deal, the first thing I'm really trying to do is to get a rehab estimate. So I find my deals off market. That's kind of, beyond this. But let's say you find your property off market. And it's like I said, a beat up, dilapidated, ugly property. First thing we need to figure out is, is this a deal we actually want to pursue? And in order to know that, we need to know how much is it going to cost to fix it up, because as we know, purchase price plus rehab costs is going to equal our, total all-in cost. And that needs to be lower than what we're going to sell the property for, obviously. So we need to know how much is it going to cost to fix it up. And so essentially what I need to do first is get a rough estimate to determine if this deal is actually going to work, right? So when I say rough estimate, I mean like, ballpark. Doesn't need to be perfect, but you do need to have a pretty good idea of what it will cost, because that's going to tell you if it's worth even putting an offer in on the property, right? So essentially what I do to do this, there's a couple things you can do, right? And also, like I said, it doesn't have to be a perfect number, because you will have due diligence when you purchase the property, but obviously the closer the better. So what I do is, and this is totally up to you, you can pay a contractor to do an estimate with you so that you can learn how to kind of go about estimating these rehabs. So you can pay a contractor $50, $100. They'll, many of them will be happy to go out there to walk with you through the property to kind of figure out if it's, to give you an estimate on the property. Now, the thing about that is not really scalable. And at some point, you can't keep walking out to every property before you offer on it. This is before we even want to know if this is a deal we want to pursue. So we need to figure this out quick. So you can do that in the beginning to learn, but after some time, what I would recommend is like trying to be more efficient. And how I do that is I essentially go to homedepot.com, lowes.com, and I figure out, I know how much square feet the property is. I know how many, let me see, somebody in the waiting room. Hold on, give me a second. Whoops. I don't know how long they was in there. Hopefully it wasn't in there too long. There we go. Sorry about that. Sam, did you have a question?
Oh no, I'm all good. I'm all good.
Okay, cool. I can't go back. Okay. So what I essentially I would do at this point is I would go to homedepot.com, lowes.com to figure out, okay, a ballpark, how much is the materials going to cost on this property, right? This is the beginning when you first are, starting this, right? And so I know that, let's say the property is 1,500 square feet. I can go to lowes.com and I know this property based on the pictures that the wholesaler or whoever sent me. I know this property is going to need flooring. I know this property is going to need, new cabinetry. I know this property is going to need all these things, right? So based on my square footage, I can go to lowes.com and figure out, okay, the flooring, this general flooring is about $3 a square foot, right? My property is 1,500 square foot. So I know flooring generally is going to be ballpark around $4,500, $5,000 on flooring, right? So that is, you can do that for flooring. You can do that for paint based off of the gallon. And that's going to, again, be based off the square footage of the house. You can do that for the cabinets based on how many cabinets you need. You can do that for light fixtures based on how many rooms there are. You can do that for a bunch of things, right? Now, it's not going to be perfect, but this is going to give you a good ballpark estimate as far as, what you need to be all in for materials. And then I would add like a 10%, kind of contingency on top of that for materials. Now, once you have your material costs, I'll essentially what I do is I double that and I have my labor costs. And so, for example, let's say our materials came out to be $20,000 or $20,000 on that property. I would just double that and I would have $40,000 as far as my rough rehab estimate. So now at this point, now that I have that, I can, now know if this is a property that's worth me at least putting in an offer. And again, don't worry too much about, okay, yeah, I need this number to be perfect. No, because you're going to have due diligence whenever you offer on these properties, right? Even whether it's off market or on market, you're going to have due diligence, right? And so if you're not comfortable doing that, then please, in the beginning, go walk the properties with contractors, pay the $50, $100 to the contractor, go walk the property with them, and they will give you an estimate, and that'll be a lot more accurate, obviously. And then you can confidently put an offer in, but just know you could potentially lose out on the property. We need to be efficient because these properties, they're not sitting. If it's a good deal, they're not sitting for a long time. So you got to be efficient, right? And so now that I have that, let's say, it's a deal that it actually works. It's actually something that I want to pursue. I'm going to now put an offer in, whatever. And before I, get to I get a signed contract, you can do I don't know. This part depends on, where you necessarily are, where you are in your journey. If you have, a contractor in your network, then you can kind of look to them to be your contractor on this property. Got somebody else in the waiting room. Okay. So I guess they do come in immediately. Okay, cool. So, so yeah, like if you know a network, if you know a contractor in your network, then cool. Ask them to give you a bid on the property. Ask them to walk the property with you. If not, what I recommend is going to Facebook real estate groups in your area, right? So type in your city, real estate investing, and then look at the groups and search contractor in there. You'll see thousands, hundreds of people mentioning contractors in there, right? And find someone that has got mentioned a couple different times, reach out to them and ask them for an estimate. Those are probably the better people in the area, in that specific area, especially if it was a recent recommendation. Now, obviously, you're gonna still want to, vet them and stuff like that. And what I do for that is I essentially, I have interview questions, and you can literally Google like questions to ask, a contractor, if you really want to, really vet them like that. What I recommend you do too is ask to talk to a couple of their, let me admit this person. What I recommend you to do is ask to talk to a couple of their previous, clients, and see how was their experience with them. Were they on time? Were they, over budget? How's their communication? All these different things, and just kind of get a reference that way. That's the best way to actually find a contractor. Now, I recommend interviewing at least 2 different ones, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Why? But now this is, again, keep in mind, this is before you even have this property under contract. The reason you want to do this is because once you have this property under contract, you want to get moving. So now you have interviewed a couple contractors, and now you can get moving on this property. So what I want to talk about real quick now, after that, I want to talk about some of the different types of rehabs, and then we'll get to the next step, right? So generally, whenever you are getting into real estate, we have a question. Okay. Yeah. So generally, when you are getting into real estate, you're going to see multiple different levels of properties that need a much, some will be very extensive, some will be very easy, right? So there's 2 ends to the spectrum as far as like the level of rehab a property will need, right? If it's a completely like, a newer house that was, let's say, 10 to 15 years old, maybe 10 to 15 years old, it might be a cosmetic level rehab, right? So when I say cosmetic, I mean just a very surface level rehab. We're not even going in there to replace flooring. We're really just, we're updating appliances, doing some light paint on some places, light fixtures, some hardware, maybe patching up a couple things on the wall, doing a little bit of cosmetic work here and there. It's a very, very light rehab. It's literally, a $5,000 to $10,000 rehab, maybe, right? And then you have a more advanced cosmetic, and I'll go through what some of these look like here in a second. But then you have a more advanced cosmetic rehab. Now, these are generally the more common rehabs that I like to go for, right? And I'll show you all a couple of the ones I've done to show you all the different levels, right? But this is going to be your flooring, your interior paint, exterior paint, cabinetry, counters, roof, maybe doing some windows, all those different things. That's an advanced cosmetic rehab, right? Then you, on the right side here, you're getting into the big leagues, right? And these rehab, I do not recommend your first project being one of these levels of rehab. I highly don't recommend it, because once you're getting into these, there's going to be a lot of surprises, things that you can't even necessarily account for, right? So when you're talking mechanical, we're talking HVAC. So, the air conditioning, the ducts, all these different things might need to get fixed. And that's a very expensive kind of thing. And if you don't know necessarily how to estimate those things and some of the surprise costs that could come with, especially doing something like electrical or plumbing, then it can be very risky. So I recommend sticking to the left side on your first couple projects if you are brand new to this. It's not impossible, but to do anything on the right, but I highly recommend initially getting your feet wet on the left side.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.